What's up, YouTube? It's Thien back with another video. I know it's been quite a few weeks. I've been traveling. Went to my motherland, Vietnam. Went for a couple weeks. I haven't been back before that for almost 10 years, like 9 years, a little over 9 years. So, I had to spend some quality time with my extended family over there. I have a bunch of cousins and uncles and aunties and, great uncles and great aunties over there. My grandfather. He's the oldest of 12, my dad's dad. So you can imagine that family tree. It's quite extensive. My dad alone also has three other siblings over there with families and kids and whatnot. So it was a good time, great time going back again in July. But anyway, back to the topic of today's video. I'll be talking about a well-requested topic from those of you out there that have been tuned in, subscribed, and shout out to all y'all that are subscribed and continue to watch my videos. I know there's a frequent question asking about essentially how to get started, how to break into tech, how to become a software engineer, how to really teach yourself to get a job as a software engineer. And so, a little bit about myself. I was self-taught enough to get into one of the most prestigious boot camps in New York, and obviously the whole boot camp scene is a lot more saturated nowadays. I attended back in 2019. I think that was some would say the peak of coding boot camps. I would beg to differ. I'd say the floor isn't that bad nowadays, although it is a lot more saturated, and I talk about that in a different video. But I think boot camps are a very solid move still, as long as you do your research and go to a solid boot camp that helps you get a job. I think now spend time on that yourself. Find out which boot camps work for you. I know there's a lot of boot camps out there that teaches you what you need to learn to code and build an app and whatnot, but that doesn't necessarily teach you how to get the job. And even with the boot camp that I went to, being the most prestigious that it was, there's still a solid handful of grads that ended up not getting a job as a software engineer, going back to their original field or whatnot. But the percent that did end up getting a software engineering role out of boot camp was very high. I think my cohort alone, I think over 80%, it was like 84% or something like that of us got a job as a software engineer after graduating. So your mileage may vary, so do your research there. But the purpose of this video is that I want to kind of go over the topics that were talked about in the bootcamp, and also provide kind of a layout for those of you out there that kind of want to teach yourself on your spare time, or are really driven to change careers, transition into software engineering, and not know where to start. Essentially, I think there's a roadmap that I'm going to reference here. It's the web developer roadmap. For those of you out there that don't know about it, it's definitely a solid roadmap for y'all and gives you a good idea, so you guys don't go down a rabbit hole and end up learning things too much, and that would not help you in the long run. And I'm pretty much going to go through the roadmap and also give my 2 cents about where you need to spend more time on and where you need to spend less time on, and with the end goal of getting a software engineering job. So let's get into it. And for those of you that don't know about the roadmap, it's on roadmap.sh. I'll provide the link down below in the description. And so, yeah, essentially what I'm going to go over is the web dev route. That's the route I went into, basically choosing a language. I know a lot of computer science majors, they learn Java and C++ and whatnot, because that's very lower level. It's not very low level, but it's a lower level language compared to JavaScript. But for those of you that don't know, the entire internet browser, Chrome, Mozilla, Internet Explorer, Edge, whatever you want to use, essentially the web browser, it's all built on JavaScript. So any web app or any website you go to is built on JavaScript, and plus HTML and CSS. But those are the 3 main things. I think you start off by learning HTML and CSS. HTML to build out your markup and build out the layout of the web page, and then CSS applies the styling. But you can get away with just learning the basics of HTML, and then learning CSS. I think to this day I still look up a lot of CSS things. Just understanding the crux of CSS and having a solid foundation there is important. I wouldn't dive too deep into it, just because you can get into a rabbit hole with HTML, CSS, and then get stuck there. I want you to spend like a day or two on HTML, CSS, and then move on to JavaScript and understand that JavaScript is going to be your bread and butter, because eventually you're going to have to choose a front-end library. And being a web dev, you're going to be very front-end heavy, generally speaking. And I would say to go with React. I know you're going to come across other libraries out there or frameworks such as like Angular and Vue and Svelte and all these other front-end frameworks, but the one that's going to get you a job, most likely, it's going to be React. I'm not saying you can't get a job with Vue or Svelte or Angular, because there are companies out there using them. But if you learn React, you're going to be able to learn the other ones for the jobs if needed. Because if you notice in a lot of job descriptions, they ask if you know at least a front-end framework. And to learn React, I think that's the most crucial one, because the majority of companies out there do use React. So work with the market. That's what I did. And then when you dive into React, that's when it's going to be a very open field out there, because there's so much libraries and things that are dependent on React. And so your mileage may vary here, but I would say learn a state management and learn React and learn JavaScript deeply. So with JavaScript, learn as much as you can with JavaScript in terms of how to use it for figuring out algorithm questions and how to build, apps with just JavaScript. I'd say start off with building a very simple CRUD app, create, read, update, delete CRUD app, so like a to-do list or something like that, or even tic-tac-toe if you wish. Just build a small app with just vanilla JavaScript. And then do the same with React. That way you will understand the differences, and you'll see that at the end of the day, React is using JavaScript under the hood. And then the same thing with other libraries are extended from React, like Redux, which is a state management. I'd also suggest learning a little bit of Redux. And also, another caveat, learn TypeScript. It's 2024. Majority of companies have migrated to TypeScript. So before you get into TypeScript, you got to learn JavaScript. But I would say that you can just dive straight into TypeScript. If I were to go back in time right now with no knowledge, and I think it's possible to learn just TypeScript, but it's hard because like I'm learning it later down the road, right? But if it was up to me, I would just learn TypeScript only, because TypeScript is just JavaScript with the caveats of typing and all the broken things that JavaScript had. And so if it's possible for you, learn TypeScript right off the rip. But obviously, JavaScript is what's happening under the hood anyway. So it's good to have the solid foundation of JavaScript. So basically, JS, JavaScript, JavaScript. That's going to be your bread and butter. That's going to be your foundation that leads you to learn all the other things. And we can get into the back end too. So yeah, with the front end, learn React. The back end, I'd say learn Node. Essentially, Node is a back end language that uses JavaScript. So it's easier for you to learn since you already have JavaScript. Not to say that you can't learn other ones like Java, Ruby on Rails, or anything like that. My first job out of boot camp had Ruby on Rails on the back end, but I was able to learn it pretty simple with the knowledge I had with Node.js. And so learn Node as a back end language, and then learn Postgres for SQL, queries and databasing. You can also go into NoSQL with MongoDB if needed. But again, I wouldn't harp on the whole backend unless that's really what you want to do. If I can go back, I think backend and frontend, you kind of just choose your own journey there. I myself am going based off of choosing frontend because it just clicked with me. And I know that I don't have an issue with the backend and working in a backend environment and developer experience. And I know a lot of my other cohort mates, they ended up deciding to learn more backend and having their jobs be a lot more about backend. So, at this point, it's going to be, you deciding for yourself. But I would say not to not learn some backend or not learn some front end, or whichever route you choose. But yeah, whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever you like when you learn it, go with that one. But I suggest, at least if you're looking for a job, dive into React more, do the front end, because that is in demand. But if I do know also, like with the whole AI movement, machine learning movement, it's a lot more back end heavy. So if you want to go that route, and there's a huge demand for that, and I'm sure you'll find a job easily taking that route as well. So whatever route you want to go to. And I would also harp on learning REST API when you learn the backend stuff, no matter what, whether you're front end or back end. And also to learn about authentication. I think authentication is very important to understand, at least. It's not the easiest to implement all the time, and there's a lot of libraries that just kind of give you like out of the box authentication. So, but you got to still be able to talk about it, especially during the interviews and especially during the job. So it's important to learn that, and then some cloud work. Either AWS or Google Cloud. Kind of do like a 101. There's a bunch of YouTube videos out there, a bunch of courses that are free out there that kind of give you a rundown on AWS or Google Cloud or even Azure. And a lot of it is free, actually. I'm pretty sure Amazon provides a free AWS like basics course to go through their products. Or you can essentially, my thing too is when you're learning all these things, just go to the docs. I think the docs alone provide so much information for you to learn the stuff, like whether it's React or JavaScript or HTML, CSS, Node, all these languages, they have documentation that you can reference. It's like the manual, the user manual of this language where you can learn. There's tutorials for you to go through, and if you just read all the docs, I'm positive that you're going to be able to have the knowledge needed to do the job. And because these are just tools at the end of the day, and you're the person that uses the tools for the job. And so, before you even begin your journey, I think it's important to talk about the environment that you set up for yourself in terms of like your computer. I think my suggestion is to go with Mac. It's the most beginner friendly, and I'm still hard on Mac. I'm still die hard on Mac because with Linux and Windows and stuff, there's a little bit more setup. But if you're really gung-ho on using Windows and Linux and you have, the determination to figure out how to set it up without any prior knowledge, go for it. But I think Mac right out of the box is ready to start deving on. And so, highly suggest using a MacBook. You don't have to use the latest and greatest MacBook to start your journey. But I think eventually when you start scaling up your knowledge and you need more performance, you might need to upgrade. But if you already have a Mac, like even if it's from like 2011, I know a buddy of mine during the boot camp, he had like a 2008, and we were in 2019, right? So that's like 11-year-old MacBook, and he's using it fine to learn everything. And so, MacBook, learn your terminal, learn about VS Code as an IDE. Some people use IntelliJ, but a lot of people use VS Code. It's free. And then learn about GitHub. I think Git in general is an important thing to learn. But learn about GitHub. That's how you push up your work and everything. So learn about terminal, VS Code, GitHub in your environment. And then at least to reiterate on the resources when you're learning these things, YouTube and the docs are going to be your best friend. Documentation is where you should start for anything that you're learning along your journey. And then YouTube to clarify and give you a visualization of things that you might not be clear on when you're reading the docs. And you can obviously use like Stack Overflow, Reddit, and ChatGPT even to give you like a more opinionated answer to questions you might have, or just answers to questions you have that aren't answered in the docs or on YouTube. And so, keep that in mind. And then I will mention some books because if you guys know me, I do love my books. I think some books I want to recommend, especially when you're trying to get a job, and this is obviously recommended by many other people. It's Cracking the Coding Interview and also Grokking the System Design. I think those two are very important reads, especially before you get your software engineering job, your first one, because they're going to be a part of the interview. Now, learning all these things is going to give you a foundation of the tools needed to do the job. And so I want to talk a little bit more about actually getting the job and what's needed to get the job. You're going to need all these foundational knowledge to be able to talk the talk, but you're going to also need to learn a bit about algorithms and a bit about like system design. That's why I mentioned Cracking the Coding Interview and Grokking the System Design. If you read those two books, I think you'll have a solid understanding of what you need, like the tools needed for the actual interview, because a lot of interviews might ask you algorithm questions. And I've talked about this in a previous video where I don't want you to spend, so many hours doing leak code. I've talked about this. I think this is my most popular video, is that leak code is not the answer. I'm not saying to not do leak code at all. I'm saying like get your an hour in a day if you need with leak code, but I think it's better to just go through as many interviews as possible, hit two birds with one stone, and try to get your experience with algorithms through your interviews, because I don't want y'all to just get attached to one job and one company that you want to work for. I want you to understand that it's important, and I've talked about this before, that the idea is to get the job as a software engineer. Get attached to being a software engineer. Don't get attached to working at Google. Don't get attached to being a lead code master. Get attached to becoming a software engineer. That's like the whole goal, and that's the whole thing I'm trying to help y'all with, because the original question is, where do you start and how do you even get there? And so hopefully this video gives you a good idea on, how to start and the journey that you need to go through on a higher level, and also what's important at the end, which is ideally to become that software engineer that a lot of you guys out there want to become. And I hope and I believe that all of y'all that are going to disembark in this journey will get there. And I hope all y'all out there, if you guys have any questions, for me, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help out with anyone out there that's, seeking to better themselves, because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to be better out here, and I hope y'all become better too. So, hope y'all enjoyed the video. Until next time, it's Thien. Peace out.